While swimming, the girl saw a banknote, and almost without hesitation, she quickly grabbed it. At the same time, she was surprised to find many more banknotes floating on the water nearby. Mary happily looked around, and sure enough, on the riverbank not far away, there were 4 black plastic bags piled up. The scattered money came from these large bags. Excited, Mary planned to load the money onto the boat without telling her friends and sneak away. However, her strength was limited, and she couldn't move the heavy rubber boat. The noise attracted her friends, Jack and Mary. Mary knew she couldn't keep it all to herself. So Jack suddenly served the queen and pulled him into the dense forest. Jack thought Mary had come to her senses and naturally went without asking why. When they arrived at their destination, he was dumbfounded. So much money. Even if they split it among 3 people, each person would get a lot. Hearing this, Mary immediately interrupted and said that the money could only be split between the 2 of them. Seeing that Jack was reluctant, she continued to offer him sweet words. Jack couldn't resist the temptation and quickly agreed to Mary's suggestion. Just then, their friend David passed by and discovered them. Mary couldn't finish this business and decided to divide the money equally among the 3 people. After a quick count, the 4 bags contained a total of $8 million. David, however, thought that his approach was illegitimate and that fighting with Wei might lead to legal trouble, so he decided to call the police as soon as possible. He started packing up his tent, intending to find the pallbearer to explain the situation. Seeing that language wouldn't work, Jack tried to use his fists to defeat David. Unexpectedly, David was no match for him and was knocked to the ground in minutes. Due to the intense fighting, David's backpack strap broke. He had no choice but to take a rope from the money bag and prepare to leave this troublesome place. Before leaving, he made sure to tell everyone that he wouldn't reveal anything and that the money had nothing to do with him. Afterwards, the 2 divided the work and tied the money bag to the hull with the rope. Then they quickly maneuvered the boat, intending to return home as quickly as possible. During the journey, they encountered a fork in the road. To avoid being discovered, Mary specifically asked Jack for the correct route. But what Mary didn't expect was 1 minute and 28 seconds. Upon reaching the downstream bank, it was filled with tourists and even patrolling police officers. At the same time, more banknotes were scattered. Fortunately, Mary was quick-witted and didn't notice. After a difficult journey, the 2 finally reached the shore, only to discover that due to Jack's carelessness, one of the bags of money had fallen into the river, instantly turning the original $8 million into $6 million. On the other side, David encountered a disheveled passerby in the woods. In fact, this passerby was a robber. A few days ago, he robbed a bank and fled by plane. Because there were police everywhere, he had to parachute to seek a chance of survival. Although he survived after landing, the money bags were missing. The 2 talked for a long time, but David never mentioned that he had found money. Just as he was about to leave, the robber found the bag on his backpack. Just like the previous generation, so he desperately chased after David. For some reason, David was running for his life in the woods. As a result, he accidentally crashed into a passing patrol car. The policeman got out and was about to check on David's injuries when the robber suddenly rushed out and knocked the policeman unconscious to the side of the road. The robber first stole David's phone and contacted Mary. Mary was very disappointed in Jack because the previous generation had been lost for no reason, so she immediately decided to wait for David to arrive. The robber then forced David to drive the police car quickly to Mary's location. They were waiting by the river for their friend's burial, but instead a police car arrived. Mary, strong and healthy, quickly packed her bag, intending to jump onto the boat and escape. However, the robber suddenly pulled out a gun, gesturing for them to hand over their money. To maintain secrecy, the 2 had no choice but to hand over the money bag they had found. At this moment, the wounded policeman woke up and tried to subdue the robber from behind, but the robber reflexively fired a bullet, ending the man's life. Just as he was about to strike, David suddenly rushed off the road and joined his 2 friends. After quickly escaping in the rubber boat and drifting for a while, Jack took out his phone to call the police, but Mary interrupted him on the spot. She believed that if the police were notified, the money they had obtained would be wasted. The 3 of them even dared to take action. David, however, had to temporarily submit because he was outnumbered 2 to 1 and would deal with it later. Not long after, gunshots rang out from all around. They looked towards the shore and saw that Jack and the bandits were firing sniper rifles. Jian and the others quickly reached the shore, intending to use the trees for cover from bullets. However, David was hit by a bullet as soon as he reached the shore and fell to the ground. Fortunately, it was only a glancing blow and he was not in mortal danger. After escaping for a while, Mary collapsed on the ground, exhausted. She hoped that David could point out the existence of the air raid shelter so that the others could survive. David, however, thought that the air raid shelter was not safe and that it would be difficult to find the exit once inside. Just as they were arguing, the robbers chased after the fallen banknotes and continued firing at them. David had no choice but to find the location of the air raid shelter and hide inside with his 2 friends. Although the air raid shelter was spacious, they hadn't gone far when they were blocked by a pile of tree roots. Mary had no choice but to cut them with her dagger. After tireless efforts, they finally opened a passage at the bottom, and the group was able to pass through in order. However, just as it was Jack's turn, the robbers suddenly caught up from behind and grabbed his foot. Mary, not to be outdone, was not to be outdone. She grabbed the backpack, trying to rescue her companion, but the 2 struggled, and Jack was strangled and died. After Mary told David what had happened, she started climbing higher. David wanted to go back to save Jack, but didn't want to, as he encountered the bandits. Forced to abandon the rescue, he fled towards Mary along the rope. Seeing the bandits chasing after her, Mary simply cut him with a dagger, ignoring David's fate. However, his strength was limited, and he was soon subdued by the bandits. The bandits were about to kill him, but discovered the purse was missing. It turned out that Mary had hidden the purse in a corner beforehand to increase the chances of contact with the bandits. The injured David suddenly appeared and knocked the robber unconscious with a blow. Mary thought he would thank him for saving her life, but instead, the robber pulled out a pistol and pointed it directly at David. With a gunshot, David immediately lost his life. This movie teaches us that in the face of enough money, never talk about feelings, not even between lovers who have made vows of eternal love.